Welcome into the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about this new record from Zaya Gray, entitled Zaya. She released that on February 21st. This is the second studio album for the singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist, and her follow-up to 2022's 19 Masters. She also released a pair of EPs entitled QWERTY and QWERTY 2, it's a reference to our standard keyboard layout, back in 2023 and 2024 respectively. And I want to lead this thing off by thanking Joe, a longtime subscriber. Admittedly, my friend, Zaya Gray was not on my radar. And had you not said anything in the comments, I don't know how long it would have taken for me to check her out. I definitely would not be doing this album review right now. You know what I like, my friend. So I just want to say I appreciate you and thank you very much. Hopefully one day we can meet in person, have a beer together, and talk about all the music that we love face to face. I hope that for all of us, frankly. If any of you ever see me out there in the world, please tap me on the shoulder, say hello, because I personally would love to thank each and every one of you for all the support that you've given me over the years. This new record, Zaya, feels like the perfect next step for an artist that just has endless potential. And her story is fascinating as well. I think the thing that blows my mind the most is her picking up at the age of 19, going to the UK, and working as a touring bassist for over a decade. Now, I'm just familiarizing myself with her, but I feel like at some point in that span of time, she had to have thought about making her own music, had to have written a composition or two, explored some element of that. But I just think it's crazy that for as talented and as gifted of a songwriter as she is, that she really only committed to it about 5-6 years ago. And prolific as well. I mentioned all of those projects because since making that commitment, she has put out a project every year after 19 Masters. Something every year for the last 4 years. Now, some of you might argue, well, yeah, there's 2 EPs and there's, a debut record that in a lot of ways feels fragmented and disjointed, and like a lot of people have argued that it just sounds like a collection of demos. I would argue that 19 Masters sounds like a sonic stream of consciousness that just pours over you wave after wave after wave. And one of the things in the short time that I've gotten into her that I admire about Zaya Gray is her ability to move on. She does so much in a short span of time in a composition. And I would argue she's one of those people that recognizes when a component of a song has served its purpose and when it's time to take that element into a different direction. And it might be something completely different. Her influences are just all over the place, but she finds a way to make it coherent. She finds a way to make it cohesive and to allow it to all come together. And so I love her music for that. I think there are very few artists out there that can do this particular thing well. This new record, Zaya, finds her venturing into more conventional structural territory as far as the songs are concerned, but they're still adventurous and they're still driven by a number of influences. I would argue that the big one, really at the foundation of her sound on this new record, is folk. I listen to her and I hear the sounds of Joni Mitchell. I hear elements of Bob Dylan. I hear elements of the Beatles. Think of Rubber Soul, Joan Baez, James Taylor. Name any of your favorite singer-songwriters over the decades. A big one for me personally is Elliott Smith. There are a couple tracks on this record where I was just like, wow. I feel like she had to have been listening to him at some point during the creative process. But I'll post this great performance and interview off of World Cafe. I'll share the link where she talks about that. She talks about in the creation process how she tries to push out outside influences. She tries to shut herself off in that pocket of time because she is one of those people that just will get so excited so quick. She says she'll like hear a dog barking and be like, oh, I need to incorporate that into my music. So I love that energy, but I also appreciate the approach that she takes to the creative process. And it's always interesting and fascinating to hear how artists approach that process because everybody's different. Speaking of folk, there's an Americana influence, a country influence almost on this record. And the big component is the slide guitar. I love it. It hits right out of the gate. It is ubiquitous on this record, and it makes it absolutely marvelous to listen to. I love how much she is using the slide guitar in her compositions on this record. And again, I love all the different influences that are at work here. There's some great riffage. So I think at its I would say ultimately this is an alternative rock record. I've seen it as like alt pop. I've seen it labeled as a number of things, but this really feels like an alternative rock record in a lot of ways. But there's elements of jazz, there's elements of electronica and trip hop. There's even bits of metal that are influencing her sound. You can definitely tell that to some degree she is a bit of a metalhead because, as I've stated before, we are all metalheads at heart. It might be a little, it might be a lot, but all of us deep down love metal at moments in our life. So I love everything that she is bringing into this record. And again, the kind of the more structural nature of the compositions, but they are still adventurous and they still will keep you engaged and entertained. From a lyrical standpoint, she is someone that in the past has been somewhat abstract. This new record finds her, I don't want to say pining over lost love, but there's definitely a big element of lost love, of heartbreak here. But what I love about the record is that the focus lyrically seems more on what happens to our self-worth when we break up with someone or something. And I think that that's what makes this record universal. I don't think it's just about romantic love. I think this is an album that is about that rediscovery of our self-worth, trying to put the pieces back together and to realize that you are talented, that you do bring something to the table, and that if you are patient and if you give it time and effort, you will find yourself with the right people, with the right entities that will acknowledge your skill set, that will acknowledge that you are talented, that you are gifted, and that you do have a lot to offer. I know that personally I've gone through it in the last year and a half working for some ding dong that just was oblivious. And I think that there's either two things. You're either ignored or the person, the entity, whatever it might be, is either oblivious. And I feel like that is worth. When you're ignored, when someone treats you like crap, that's on them, I would argue. And we've all dealt with that. We've all dealt with crappy people that, whether it's jealousy, whatever it might be that is driving their negative behavior towards you, it's on them ultimately. You need to just focus on being the best, most talented person that you can be, and the outside haters, let them hate. But I might argue, and this is where I've felt a lot of hurt in the last year, that oblivion is tough when you yourself cannot see that someone doesn't see your worth, because the oblivion factor, it doesn't pour off in, vituperative, just meanness, negativity. I feel like the level of oblivion sometimes that people operate with is, it is on them, but ultimately I feel like it's on a person to realize that those people, they just don't see, and they're not worth working hard for. They're not worth waking up every day for and investing hours and the energy into. And so that's what I'm feeling in this record. There's a balance of both sides of feeling the feeling the negativity from others, but also acknowledging that you missed it. And that is so frustrating sometimes that it can be very difficult to move on from, but we all have to do it. We all need to acknowledge that we've been there before. And it's about identifying those situations, about identifying those people, those patterns of behavior, and getting out before it's too late. And I think that while this record lyrically is focused on romantic relationships, it's universal in that regard. And I think that no matter what your situation is right now, no matter what comes to mind when you think of, just feeling that rejection, this album's going to resonate with you. And it's remarkable for that reason. I think it's a tough journey, but it's one that I'm happy to continue going through with her over and over again. Cause some of the lines they're just so biting, and they're just in some ways gut wrenching, but there's this catharsis in hearing it and going through it that is almost kind of a relief. It's almost this self-acknowledgement of knowing that Being your own worst enemy, overcoming that fear sometimes is tough, but it needs to be done. So excited to get into the track list on this thing. It opens up with "Thus Is Why I Don't Spring for Love." The song has got these sci-fi driven synths that flutter around to open. The vocal hits with this country influence, that slide guitar that I talk about that I love. And I love when the acoustic rhythm hits, the synths basically just drop out. This song finds a sludgy groove. I really love the melodies. There's this heaviness to the track, but melodically it's light, and I love the contrast there. Great combination of alternative rock and country music. The drums and bass are great. Phenomenal rhythm. There's playful effects that are at work here, and the production on this record, I will mention, is phenomenal as well, in my opinion. I think that there's a lot of attention to nuance and to detail. Those playful effects that you hear in and out of this song really are a good example. And I just I love the way that this thing sets the bar for what she's trying to do on this record right out the gate. "Shell of a Man" is your second track. Incredible riff on this song to open, and I'm excited for you guys to check out the live performances, because while she plays bass on most of the stuff, she's playing that lead acoustic riff, and it's awesome. It's folk driven, arpeggiated. I really love the soft bass and drums that are ushered in behind that. You get this driving acoustic rhythm that's going to match once the song starts doing its thing. Bright vocal, and just the slide textures that are at play here are phenomenal. This is a track that, talking about a guy like Elliott Smith, I really couldn't help but hear his influence, hear his sound on this song. "Lineback 22" is your third track. Somber, simple piano with a big vulnerable vocal. And she started her music career off by playing piano, then switched to bass, but she still got it on the keys. I really love just the complementary harmonies that are at work here as far as the vocal component. Vocal's going to take this recitative turn to open. And I feel like there's a big R&B influence on this particular track. Bits of harp and other textures. I love the call and response vocal that's playing around at moments in this song as well. That's another fun component. Just all those different pieces, as I mentioned, that come together so well. She does so much in such a short span of time. It takes a minimal drum and vocal-driven turn in the coda that's very psychedelic, and I really love the way that it just kind of like veers off. But what's cool about this is that drum component leads right into your fourth track, "Puddle of Me." It's seamless. It's brilliantly done. Opens with that drum component, light dueling guitars that are going to usher in the vocal. Drums create somewhat of an urgent pace, but I love that. I love the lyrics in this track. I got to read them here, because "Insufficient funds, the gun to my head, you're an expensive friend, and I'm going to move to California for you. How did I get here again? You know there's a puddle of me at where your feet. Isn't that what you needed of me? You know how obsessed I can get with your needle and thread pulling in and out of me." I love that. It's like there's so much going on in that line there. There's part of this like caving to someone, which I think, when you talk about romantic love, I think that's something that we all desire, that person that you just want to like be absorbed by, like you just want to just fall right into their skin and be absorbed by them. But there's also that idea of that needle and thread just painfully pulling. It is just so brilliant, the visualization that you get from there. You know how obsessed I can get with your needle and thread pulling in and out of me. Marionetta, I love you. Marionetta, I want to. You prey on me with your voodoo. You play with me when you want to. Now would you believe me if I told you the sun dances right into my room? Lately I borrow time from tomorrow just to keep her satisfied with the light of today. But no, there's a puddle of me at your feet. Isn't that what you needed of me? It's just so intense. And really, I would say from a lyrical standpoint, you get maybe one of the best songs that she's put out to date, with like the lowest of lows as far as the emotional experience. And it's just extremely well done, in my opinion. How Long Can You Keep Up a Lie is your fifth song. Brilliant song title. I love that. Very Beatlesque. This was a song that as soon as it hit, as it began to unfold, I felt a lot of that that rubber soul feel to this track. Thick bass, drums that almost swallow you up. And speaking of that thick bass, that jazz influence that's there a little bit, I really enjoy that. Balanced with just this like driving, just rimming snare. Like I really just love the constant like just rim shots that are driving this track. Arpeggiated acoustic guitar, and a great wind section. That was another thing that it felt very Beatle-esque to me, is the wind, the instrumental wind component that is there. It's going to create this drone-like quality, the wind instruments anyway. It's going to work in some slide, because why not? It's what we're doing on this record. Really enjoyed that song a lot. Cat's Cradle, your sixth track, is a kind of just like an interlude, but it's got trippy vocal effects that ushered in this fringy arpeggiated guitar, acoustic guitar, spoken word. There's harp textures that are swirling in and out of this thing. Just a lot of psychedelia, a lot of chaotic texture. And I love lyrically, it's brief, but what's going on here? What's your love life in real life? What's your love life without leaving you? Almost took my laugh from me. Calling your bluff is easy when cliffs fall. Since when has fame replaced great art? That line is freaking awesome. I think sin is for the abiding citizens. Since when is there two opinions to every decision? If I'm not there to receive, I give permission that this gift be given to those readily able to perceive. What's the world without meaning? It's pretty cool stuff. Really a big fan of that. Even though it is just kind of like a short interlude, it really does a lot for this record, in my opinion. 10 Ways to Lose a Crown is your seventh track. Another great song title. Dark, brooding, arpeggiated guitar, matches the mood of the vocal. This is another dark moment, and I feel like we're getting into more of that terrain as we get into the back half of this record. Light harmonies are going to complement, though. I love the piano that trickles around. There's and there's a couple moments on this record actually where like she'll have a little piece going and then she'll just do this little trickle, and oftentimes she'll play along with the guitar, with the bass. Shell of a Man is another example where she's doing that, and I love that element of this record. Lighter ground on this track as it progresses. Gentle rhythm is going to take hold in the chorus. The guitar takes over with that trickle that I talked about. The piano does in the second verse. And then this thing just closes with dark, chaotic synths. Another one of those tracks that just kind of like veers off and does its own thing to close, and it's pretty cool. HBW is your eighth track. Heartbreak Wake is what that stands for. And another song that I really woke up in a heartbreak wake. I love the hook sonically, what she's doing, the way that this song, it kicks off with this thick droning bass, this just heavy electronica element, almost trip hopish, I'd argue. Driving hi-hat that's going to work, bright vocal. And then you get this kind of like softness that takes hold of the song. With the arpeggiated acoustic rhythm that's driving it. But then, when she hits that line, like that's when you get that heavier shift back to the electronica. And it really is a fun composition. I'd say structurally, probably the most tame, but I think it's really powerful as well because of that. Exhaust the Topic is your ninth track. Another great song title. She's kind of known for that. I mean, I think she has a song called Edible Underwear or Edible Panties on one of those EPs. Again, I'm kind of new to her, but I know that she has a song title like that and some other adventurous ones that are pretty fun. So that's something that she's great at, giving it a lot of thought. Trippy, percussive elements that are really just all over the place in this track. Driving acoustic guitar. I love the intermittent jazz inspired bass, the slide elements that are coming together with that on this song. There's a moment where like the acoustic guitar almost has this muted quality and the vocal element backs off a little bit. I love that component of this song. And it's just got this like driving tin sounding percussion. It sounds like someone's just like tapping on like a piece of metal. But it's brilliantly done, talking about the production of this record and those components, what they're bringing to the table. The percussion anyways is going to evolve into just like a tornado of elements. So I really dig that about this track. Slide is really going to take hold as well. And just when you think this thing is over, it's going to rock out. And I feel like that's where you get a little bit of her heavy rock and roll kind of metal side. And then Lie Down is your final track, your 10th song. It's got this rollicking bass. It's going to take the album back into lighter territory for a simple drums and just a gorgeous slide element, because again, why not? Minimalism is kind of the key here on this track, and it allows the bright vocal that she's bringing to the table to really be the highlight of this song. It's going to maintain this feel until the coda, when it drifts into this psychedelic, computer-driven electronic effect. But I would say that Saya with this record is on the right path. This is a marvelous effort from her, and I think that there's a lot that is giving us insight into what we can expect of her down the road in the future. Great artist, great record. I'm going to give this album an 8.2 out of 10, and we're going to vinyl please it. Can't wait to zip over to Zia Records and pick this thing up. Go pick this up at your local record store. Support small business, do all that good stuff. And I hope you find this review helpful. I hope you enjoy this record as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2025. And stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. I'm taking a break currently from Classic Wax, but I will bring that back here shortly, and I'd say probably about a month and a half. Just really busy being in the middle of season down here in Tucson with work. We have a lot going on. And if I'm going to do live segments, I just want to make sure that I'm bringing my A game to the table for all of you and not wasting your time. So in the meantime, take care of one another, and we will see you on the beat sessions.